And welcome back to the really live Green Rush Business of Cannabis talk show. I'm Jimmy Young, from Pro Cannabis Media, the founder here, and sometimes the regular host of Green Rush Live. We are joined by a very special guest host, my pal, Curt Dalton from Cannabis.net. And now we have three extremely excellent guests for you. I didn't know, I was lost for words, guys, because I'm oozing with pride of the fact that I've got Scott Moskol from Burns Levinson, I've got Jeff Finkle from the Arcview group, and we have Michael Correia from the NCIA with us. This is a trio. This is like the Mount Rushmore of cannabis interviews. You know? Okay.
We only have 30 minutes. Think about that.
That's right. Michael, I do want to start with you. And then I definitely want to get Curt and Scott to go back to talking what they were talking about in the break. But Michael, I want to ask you, how were lobby days? Was the NCIA pleased with the turnout? And did you enjoy yourself?
So a quick little background. We haven't done in-person lobby days in almost 3.5 years because the Capitol was closed down. I didn't think events were going on. I didn't think people would want to travel. So when we I thought about it in the summertime, I thought maybe I would get 20 people, 30 people. It would be a miracle. We got 118 people coming out, which was amazing. And even at our peak, we would get 300 people. So I was really pleasantly surprised. There was a lot of energy from our members to want to get out and talk about cannabis. It had been so long. It was great. I couldn't have been happier. We did a opening reception. We honored Congressman Ed Perlmutter. We gave him a Lifetime Legislator Achievement Award at our opening reception, which is great. We had a press conference on the Senate side with Senator Merkley. Senator Daines gave comments, and because he's retiring, we had Ed walk over to the Senate side and give some comments. We had some of our members speak. I spoke. Aaron spoke. It was wonderful. The media coverage after it was great. You know, the cannabis industry in DC pushing for SAFE one last time. So I love the message. We had a closing reception, which was great, and we had 100+ meetings going on, mainly pushing for SAFE and just cannabis in general. So I couldn't have been happier. I had no idea what to expect. So I was really happy. And there's an energy now to where we can do it again in May next year, and people already want to come back. So I couldn't have asked for a better week last week.
There you go. I'm glad to hear that.
Come down. I wish you would have come down.
I wish I could have come down, but I actually moved into our new world headquarters here, even though it looks exactly the same as it has always looked. By the way, we're in our 3rd year of this show, live Friday afternoons at 4:00. I can't believe I've survived it, to be honest with you.
You couldn't have picked a worse time, by the way.
Thank you very much. That's exactly why I picked it, Jeff, because only people who want to be here will be here. Okay. I'm going to leave you for last, Jeff. We're going to go to Scott Moskol next. He is, of course, one of the co-chairs at the Burns Levinson, the cannabis division of Burns Levinson, one of the top law firms in the country. Just want to say, Scott, good to see you, sir. You and Curt were actually talking about some breaking news or some news from this week about the what's going on with the state of Maine. Am I right?
Sure. So I don't know, Curt, do you want to lead off, or do you want?
Well, let me pump up Jimmy's tires first. The original topic was Scott and I did a show with Jimmy with Professor Mikos about interstate commerce and would a medical, especially exemption, basically allow for interstate commerce legally if challenged by the dormancy clause, commerce clause in the Constitution. And Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know, I think it was maybe a month or so ago, the First Circuit ruled that the dormant commerce clause essentially prevented Maine from having residency restrictions for obtaining medical licenses. And so that was appealed to the full panel of the First Circuit, and the First Circuit, I think sometime this week, just released it's an order basically saying further appeal denied. So right now, that is the law of the land, unless it's appealed to the Supreme Court. but essentially, the First Circuit recognized that the Dormant Commerce Clause does prevent states from putting on these undue restrictions to the residency requirements. And so we know that other states and other jurisdictions have similar ones. Missouri, had one for a while that was just overturned, I guess, last year. So should be interesting to see, Curt, what goes on. And actually, as we know, you were mentioning California. I don't know if you want to run with that one.
Yeah, Governor Newsom just signed in basically his own version of an interstate commerce law, even though he's a governor of a single state. And the reason this is such an exciting story, and our good friend David Rabinovitz would be excited, is that this could open up a medical to medical interstate legal commerce at the federal level, we'll call it, unless I'm wrong, Scott, more before rec, actually. So medical.
Well, the bill would only go into effect if cannabis was prohibition ended. So there's still a wait. I mean, it's very symbolic more than anything else at this point.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, now let's go to Mr. Jeff Finkle, the CEO of the Arcview Group, a very successful cannabis fund that is based in New York City. Jeff, as always, good to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, so you've got the law of the land. We've set the scene. What is the investment community? What is the flavor? What is the temperature of the investment community in with cannabis? Because everything we hear, we being others out there just reading newsletters and what have you, are all saying, oh, no, nobody's investing in cannabis anymore. Tell me what's going on with that.
Well, I think the biggest challenge that the industry has is the sort of retrading of the public markets, right? They're down 80% since the high. They've rebounded about 20%. And the challenge with that is that people who would normally consider allocation to private companies, either directly into a fund or directly into an issuer, are just sort of looking at the world and saying, why don't I just take that allocation and buy across the top 5 or 10 MSOs and, maybe get 4 times my money in 6 years, which is a traditional venture capital rate of return. So that's the big challenge we're having. When those stocks rebound, and that's 2x, then it changes the equation. So I think you've got a few things going on. You've got that sort of push of capital that's less interested in the privates at the moment. You've got a lot of the 2000. So if you go back to the 2016 vintage venture funds, many of those funds were small funds that ran out of money, and only a select few of them were able to raise their successor fund, the Meritas, the Entourage Effect Capitals, and the so forths, that now have fresh capital to invest in early growth and growth capital opportunities. So there's been a shift away from available capital. But what I will tell you, and I know this because we're talking to lots of investors to try to get them to come and participate on our stage for our investor conference in October, there's a lot of new money that is kind of under the radar, that are not the traditional names that want to play. And a lot of that is coming from the tri-state area because they've been sitting on the sidelines, been watching what's happened, but now it's in their backyard. So there are groups that we don't know that are not the household names that are making allocations that are interested. And I got to tell you, some of them have fairly big pockets that are willing to spend.
Hey, Jim, can I ask Jeff a question?
Yes, of course.
So, hey, Jeff, the big thing right now is safe banking. Can we get this during lame duck? My question to you, do you think if SAFE doesn't go through, the investors are just going to sort of walk away from cannabis in the short term? I know it's a great long-term investment, but do you just see them throwing their hands up and say, I'll come back to this in like 2 years? What's your thought on that?
Well, I first was going to ask you the question, what the prospect of SAFE was in the lame duck. So hopefully you'll tell us.
We can talk about that. I'm more optimistic now than before, and we can talk, Jimmy. Let's hit on that after that. So, I just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
See, I think SAFE is actually going to be that boost to rejigger the public markets and drive that difference on what kind of return you can garner as a public company investor or an investor in private issuers or private funds. So I think it's important for that reason. Do I think people are going to kind of walk away if it doesn't pass? This is the 7th time it didn't pass, right? I think it passed the House 7 times. Am I right?
Yes.
8 or 6? 7 times. So I don't think it's going to have an enormous effect. There's this money's been sitting on the sidelines or not available and allocated for the last 6 months. So I don't think it gets worse. I think it's probably status quo, except again, for this new money, this new interest that's watching the tri-state area emerge, that, you know, that's coming in and wants to figure out how to play.
But you don't think, Jeff, that it gives some bounce at all to the markets?
Oh, it gives a tremendous bounce. To the
Okay,
numbers.
good.
Yeah, it's really, really important. It's the one, I think you would all agree, the one regulatory initiative that I think is close to being realized. I mean, right, descheduling, I don't think so, repeal of 280E, probably part of rescheduling. I don't know if that can happen separately. So this is the thing that gives life to the publics and then by extension, the privates, in my opinion.
I just can't believe that what we heard here just recently. Cannabis now can impact the economy in such a huge way. It's almost it's a tool or maybe it's another arrow in his quiver. And I'm saying he being the leaders of the Democratic Party who seem to be, you know, pushing this along, Chuck Schumer, certainly with his COA bill and all that. But I'm amazed that it hasn't happened yet. We let inflation go. I mean, everybody is pissed about the price of gas and everything and how much groceries cost. Anybody been to a supermarket lately? And I can't believe that cannabis has become a political issue in the middle of this whole mess that has become the United States of America. Michael, you look, you've been preaching low-hanging fruit of safe banking for as long as we've been talking on this show.
9 years I've been preaching it. And the thing is, it's amazing when you mention the investors in the tri-state area. Hey, give your senators a call and let Schumer and Booker know about how important this could be and how it could open it up. But we wanted our lobby days push to be specifically focused on safe. As Jeffrey mentioned, it's passed the House 7 times, you know, talking about it in the House, like, let's move on. Senate, this is it. You have a couple months before the election, then lame duck. And history shows that the election midterms aren't good for the party in power. That may change, but our dynamic is you have a very short time to get this done. Our Senator Merkley spoke about they're negotiating among Democrats, and he actually gave some of the topics that they were negotiating, which made me happy. Our members had bumped into Senator Booker in the elevator and chatted him up. And he said, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen during lame duck. So this isn't going to happen in the next week or two, but after the election, I give it a better than 50 chance. It depends on the election results. Cory Booker could have easily said, sorry, guys, like, I'm just not there. This isn't happening. Move on. But the fact that he said it could happen during lame duck, I think there's a lot of good discussions with the people in positions of power in leadership to where those discussions are happening. And I'm not going to sit there and say this language is going to be included. There's a lot of different ideas, and I'm supportive. We're supportive of any idea on Safe Plus. We're supportive of, but all I want to do is get 60 votes and get this to the president. If that's safe, great. If that's safe with veterans, great. If that's safe with research, great. If that's safe with expungement, cool. I'm getting everything, but these are senators. You know, I use the example of Build Back Better, and they finally pivoted and got the Inflation Reduction Act, which was much smaller, but still historic. You can get SAFE done. You can get it done tomorrow. You just need to be willing to, you know, Senator Schumer, negotiate how much you're willing to accept on this. But the votes are there, like, let's get it done, because I don't want to come back to next Congress and keep going back to SAFE. If not now, when are we going to do this?
Michael, I think one thing that has to be said, and I'm a big proponent, big proponent of SAFE for years and years, but if it actually, let me say, when it is passed this year, it does not necessarily mean that all banks are just going to open their doors to cannabis, start lending. A lot of banks still won't because of federal illegality, but there's still other federal requirements like the Bank Secrecy Act and all this other stuff that will keep certain of the banks out of it And also, we're still we'll look for guidance from FinCEN. We have one little piece of guidance from 2014, which is very vague. So I would just warn, a lot of people think that all of a sudden, I can now go to Bank of America, I'll get a loan for my, my cannabis grow. And that's not necessarily going to happen. It could happen maybe in a year or two, but I think, I think it's a great thing. Don't get me wrong.
That's a good point. And as long as this is a Schedule I drug, the DOJ can go around and scare people, or there can be other issues for enforcement. But, this, to me, I've always looked at this as a little more certainty than the day before,
Yes.
A little more clarity on what regulators are thinking, what the federal government is thinking, to where now I'm an institution, I'm a regulator. Okay, this is not a priority. This is where we're going, and you just you knock a little off, and you get a little more momentum going, and you go forward. Will the world change? No, but for some businesses, it could lower the cost of a bank account. It could lower the cost of capital, and as Jeffrey mentioned, it could bring a wave of money into this industry, which would now give us momentum in our advocacy efforts for pushing legalization. I'm one of these people that thinks it gives fuel to advocacy and change, versus somehow it's going to suck the oxygen out of the room, or people are going to leave because once they got their money, they're done. I don't believe that's the case.
I want Curt to jump in here and talk a little bit about his feelings about Delta 8. And
let me ask
all right.
Michael a question, because you said you could get it done tomorrow. Schumer could get it done. Our sources say Republicans are just not that interested in the social equity part like Booker is. What does Schumer have to give to get it done tomorrow? What would it look like if, metaphorically, get it done this week? What do the conservative or the non-fans of this want?
And that's where you're going to have to get into the room and talk to Senator Daines, talk to Senator Kramer, and say, listen, is it safe? Is it safe plus? If they say it's only safe, well, then there's your 10 votes right there, or 12 votes, or 15 votes. And Schumer and Booker are going to have to make a decision. But the expungement bill in the House is a Dave Joyce bill. That's a Republican bill. If they sit here and say, listen, I can accept some expungement or some social justice, it's definitely, Curt, is definitely not a priority with Republicans. And I think Senator Kramer had even said he's not negotiating, but this is one person. And, the numbers, we need 60. And if the numbers are 65 or 70, you can lose one, or you can lose two, or lose three. But it is, if the Republicans in mass, say, we're not going to support any of this, well, then it's dead on arrival. So, Schumer at least needs to be willing to negotiate this bill and then bring it up for a vote. And then let's see how people vote, because we've had some Senate offices who I never thought in my wildest dreams would support SAFE, that said they would support SAFE if it came up. So I think we need to bring it up, and I think people would be pleasantly surprised.
Is Booker holding on to social equity at this stage, or social justice part of this bill? Cutting off his nose to spice his face to get it done?
I wish I knew what this grand strategy was. That would be wonderful if I knew, because we want what he wants, but he has even said he thinks, the momentum leaves the room because the money people already got what they were looking for. And I just don't believe that. Right. I wish he's had public comments, he had a hearing, he's made statements, is trying to parse his words and get exactly what he means. But it's very frustrating, because we want the same thing, but what Cory Booker wants may be years into the future, and that, we can't wait for that to happen.
In two articles over 2 days, I think last month, Booker went back and forth. First, he said it's got to be Safe Plus, it's got to have these social equity initiatives. And then he said he was flexible. So, I don't know either. And I know that there is some, while it's still politicized, there's certainly more bipartisan support. I think it gets done. And I think Booker comes away from some of the things that he held fast and true in an effort to give this industry a kick.
Although I would say, for those who say that once it's done, the money, the folks with money are kind of disinterested in reform, I disagree. I think until 280E goes away, you know, the money's going to be very much interested in reform, and even to the extent till NASDAQ and or NYCE allows listings. You know, then that's done, then maybe they're not so interested in ending prohibition entirely, but there's still a long way to go, you know, for just because SAFE is passed.
I agree
I'm
with Scott.
shocked that a politician actually said one thing and then another thing. Shocked to hear that.
He must be a lawyer, right? He must be a lawyer. So there,
But it was within 4 business days.
I think Scott's right on that. The 280E reform, he's talking about, you know, making money, and the floodgates opening is a much bigger deal than SAFE. And if you just look at the numbers on spreadsheets, the difference it would be at a regular tax rate, it's bananas. So you're right. SAFE is nice, but if you're talking, I don't want to say get rich quick, but you want the big windfall, the 280E reform. The federal government makes a lot of money off cannabis prohibition and having it not legal because of 280E.
Although Schumer's MORE Act, when he was going to put an excise tax, apparently, I've talked to accountants. I'm not an accountant, but at the higher end of his proposal, people, operators would pay more in taxation because of this excise tax than potentially under 280E. So kind of be careful what you wish for sometimes, right?
And we, when they gave their discussion draft, NCIA gave 40 pages of comments, and our economist, Bo Whitney of Whitney Economics, gave a very thorough discussion. And he basically said that it would be worse in this new legalization than under 280E. And when you see something like a 25% federal tax, it's not 25%. It's you add on state, local, all these others, you're talking 40, 50, 60%. That's going to allow the illicit market to stay there. And we have to be thinking a much lower number.
I do want to get back to Curt's blog, because I thought he made some great points about Delta 8. This was not something that Mitch McConnell figured out that before he drove it through in December of 2018. There's no way. Curt, you made some great points. I'm going to allow you to kind of set it up here for another round of discussion. But Delta 8 can get you high, people. Okay, this is not what they expected when they did this. Go ahead, Curt.
Leave it to the nerdy scientists to take the elements, the Frankenhemp, and put it all together and reverse it and create a Delta 8. And if you want to go Delta 9 from hemp, which is Delta 9 is THC, to get you, especially in the liquid form. And we've written a lot about how, because it's done by net weight and there are no exclusions for liquids, now you're talking a much stronger version than, say, a flower, because liquid is so dense compared to a flower. Do you guys think that the booming Delta 8 legal hemp industry, federally been challenged twice and stood its ground, is really cutting in and part of this price decline of what we're seeing in the cannabis industry now? People are ordering Delta 8, especially in the drinks, getting high as a kite like cannabis, and it's, quote, legal, federally legal, minus the states that have outlawed it.
I think it's personal taste. I, by the way, love Delta 8. I am not an active Delta 9 user, maybe to go to bed. But Delta 8 gives me every aspect of the experience except the part I like the least. Gives me the body high, gives me the relaxation, but it kind of carves out that deep introspection, which could sort of go over to paranoia. So I don't see it as cannabis light. I don't see it as Delta 9 light. I see it as Delta 9 different. And I think for me, it's the perfect relaxation or recreational experience. So, as one buyer, it's not cost driven or what the origin genesis of the plant is, it's the experience.
I agree with you.
I love it.
Scott, you want to?
I've never tried it, but I've tried much Delta 9 my lifetime, and this week.
An hour ago.
Anything that cut. I mean, I was surprised at how prevalent it became. I was talking to someone who went to Nashville, I think, or Memphis, and they said, "Oh, we went to a pot cafe." I'm like, "What are you talking about? There's no such thing in Tennessee. There's no adult use there." And then it was a Delta 8 cafe. I'm like, "What is going on here?" But I think my concern is it's unregulated to a certain extent in these places. It's like you said, derived from a scientific experiment, more or less. Granted, I don't think shatter is necessarily organic in and of itself, so I'll grant you there. But at least we know shatter is being tested for cannabis being tested for pesticides and potency and everything else, the labs at every state level. But anything that provides an alternative, and now I actually want to try it because of what Jeff said, but anything that provides an alternative it could cut into sales, and margins are short, margins are being very stressed. People are, competition's going up all across the mature states. And, in Tennessee, maybe they will never go adult use. And that's a problem for sort of the industry, but also the movement as a whole, right? I mean, it seems to me, Michael, your constituency, which is all of us, probably would be too thrilled.
Yeah, and Jimmy, you mentioned Mitch McConnell. I don't think they were thinking of Delta 8 because it probably wasn't really, more like scientifically, the technology was probably there, but it wasn't at any broad use. And I know it's come into my consciousness in sort of like the past 2 years. And I think it's sort of, it's an unintended consequence of regulations or lack of, and it's sort of the science getting way far in front of regulations. And you mentioned it is unregulated. It is unregulated. Not to say it's good or bad, but I don't think it's good policy to have something out there. And people will maybe say the supplement market, and every time you open up a supplement, it says, the FDA hasn't approved this. You could go a little extreme, but it is an example where people want to consume this product, and you see the free market, having an effect where people are going to get this market, legal or illegal, illicit, regulated or not, and it's going to drive prices down. And this is why, NCIA did a paper on what we thought regulation should look like 3 years ago. And we want a robust regulatory structure, but not so much to where people don't want to participate in it. But you should just know as a consumer what you're sort of consuming. I think that's a good, a basic level. And then there's the policy issue. And it is, I think people, industry people do look at this as undercutting their market, but I think courts have determined that this is legal. It's out there, it's not going away. You can't shut it down. But I look at the political optics of this, and I see all these soccer moms out there in the South, going, wait, Mike, we can't, there's no cannabis in these states. And then they realize that, wait, their kids are getting cannabis at the gas station and it is legal. I think there could be some pushback on something like that, just like when there was Four Loko beer and stuff like that, where sometimes there's just going to be a public pushback. And I don't want it. I want this to be a good regulated industry that's legal, that can work between the states, and there's an equilibrium in price and the illicit market disappears. But until the feds do something, it's exactly like this, which is going to be around. You're going to have these discrepancies.
Well, it's surprising that some states have said it's banned, right? So it's surprising to me, a state like Tennessee, which has been more or less kind of anti-cannabis, more or less, right? Delta 9 at least, hasn't taken some type of stand to say, hey, just like all these other states, you can't buy it, can't have these type of cafes. But maybe they're making more money that way. What do I know?
Yeah,
Everybody wants to make money. I totally get it. Guys, Michael Correia from the NCIA, Jeff Finkle from Arcview Group, Scott Moskol from Burns Levinson. You guys are great. You should have your own show. I don't need to be here anymore. Okay.
So invite us back every month, Jimmy.
Let's push Jimmy out.
Anyway, I do appreciate you taking the time on a Friday afternoon to join us, and really it was a great conversation. The best part of a talk show, I believe, as a host, is when I don't have to talk, so I can just listen, and that makes my job a lot easier. So I want to thank you guys again for joining us. We are coming on to the top of the hour, and on the other side, two of my favorite people in the business are going to join us. One is Chris Walsh, the CEO of MJ Biz, and Jamie Pearson, the CEO of Bang Nation. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
As a broker, we have access to many, many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the three. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.